This CoreCon training video explores another design element found in SyncFusion Bold BI Custom Dashboard Designer, namely the Pivot Grid widget. The Pivot Grid is similar to the Grid widget and allows you to display summarized data in a cross-tabular format, for example, rows and columns. A pivot grid needs to have a minimum of one value, one row, and one column element to showcase proper pivot table details. We already started a custom dashboard, and we're going to add the Pivot Grid widget as a new element. So let's go to Edit Dashboard. And as you can see, we've already added a few widgets. The Pivot Grid widget is found in the widget palette under the heading Relationship called Pivot Grid. And we're just going to take that and drag it right into the design canvas. Let me go ahead and expand it a little bit. We'll come back and resize it again later. The next step is to make sure that we have the appropriate data source added to this custom dashboard. So we're going to go to Data Source, and the API or data source that we're looking for is called CoreCon API Cost Resource. So we're going to go to the bottom and add a new data source. And I'm just going to search for a keyword, and it's the CoreCon API Cost Resource, and click Add. Now let's switch to the Properties tools, and with the Properties tab available, although not required, you can name your pivot table. So I'm renaming it from Pivot Grid 1, which was a default, to Cost Resource Analysis. But again, not required at this point. You could come back and do that later. Now we want to switch tabs and go over to Assign Data. And in the data sources, we want to pick the specific API that we're using for this design. Now the Pivot Grid is a little different than the Grid widget. In this case, we're going to drag the Measures fields up to Values and the Dimensions fields up to rows or columns. So from the Measures fields, we're looking for the cost to date approved. And we're just dragging that into the values. Next, from the dimensions fields, we're going to add the project number, and we're adding it to the rows. We'll do the same for the prime contract number. And there's a search bar here if you want to search for these. And then again, from the dimensions, we want to add the job cost code to the columns. And as you can see, the pivot grid's beginning to form. So we'll just drag that over to full width. Now we may want to rename a few of these fields just to shorten them up. So we'll go to the properties within the field, click rename. We'll call that cost to date. Also, while we're here, make sure that we're checking the function. In this case, we're using the sum. And we'll go down to the format, and we'll switch this to currency and take out those extra decimal places, and then click OK. You can see the dollar amounts now have been reformatted. Let's rename a few more fields in the properties. Rename. Now we can adjust the width and the height again. And obviously this one's going to be a wide pivot grid, so we have the slide bars available. Now with the pivot grid selected, we can go back to properties, either here or here, and switch also to the properties tab. And we'll make a few changes to the pivot grid format. So we're going to add the text wrap and the column resize. We're going to show group bar and allow sorting. We're going to allow filtering. We're going to show grand totals. And let's take out the row subtotals and the column subtotals. And we'll scroll down to formatting. Maybe we'll adjust the font a little bit. And then click the auto font size again. Now down to container appearance. We could adjust the font. We can also change the title color. And then down to container actions and take out some of these we don't need. And remember to click Publish to save. Now we'll go back out to the dashboard list. We're still in the Custom tab, and the dashboard that we just finished designing is this one. Some of the advantages of using a pivot grid is that you have the ability to filter, in this case by contract number. You have the ability to change the sort order. Same for job cost codes. And if you select the project, in this case the project has multiple prime contracts, they'll also show up on the pivot grid. If you'd like to know more about this subject, we encourage you to go to the knowledge base, to reporting and analytics, to project analytics, and then to the business intelligence dashboards and reports. The information we covered in this training video was the pivot grid widget. Some of the things were already set up in that custom dashboard, and how to set those up are covered in some of the earlier steps.